me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me in. Yeah. Gon' play that. Take you down, I'ma say that. Mine need me a couple dollars. Telling you now this payback. So I take that. Ask them now, we'll say that. I've been going to the top and I got what they not, so I know that they hate that. But I'm on now. All these lanes gonna zone out. And all these lanes gonna tell you what I did. And they twist and they worse till I fall out. But I know that. So I keep what I'm doing cause I own that. And I stay in the lab and I kill everything. But I don't ever move, I'm a Kodak. So I'm gone. Finally back in my home. I'm working like so much. They swear I had me a clone. Can't answer my phone now. Just leave it there, that tone. Ballin' can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now. Cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now. Ballin' can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. Let me into my zone.
Hey guys, so that was a 70-minute workout. I'd like to get a little more detailed about the equipment I use, why we use an indoor trainer, because I've been getting a lot of questions about it. As I explained before, we've got a Zwift app, which is basically all of my programs from my coach. My workouts of the day are loaded in there. It's connected to the Wahoo Kicker, which is the brand name of an indoor trainer I have. For the indoor trainer, all you're doing is taking the back wheel off of your bike that you either use for racing or out in town. This is an older tri-bike I have, and I use it permanently over here. The Wahoo Kicker has a cassette that you just put the chain on. Once you start pedaling, it does the revolutions, the resistance for you. You can see here it's got mechanical shifting, but you don't use any of the shifting of the bicycle. This is called a Wahoo Clicker. It allows you to change if you need to make minor adjustments on the resistance or the power that you're putting out, but typically the app is going to do all of it for you. So the benefit of that is as soon as you start pedaling, you're not going to stop pedaling until the workout is complete. That makes it a demanding workout in comparison to if you go outside. You would have to deal with the traffic, or if you're going downhill, it would take off the resistance from your legs. When you get to a stoplight, you would have to stop pedaling. So for me today, I started pedaling for 70 minutes straight, and I was pedaling. So it makes it efficient as well. For me, I just walked downstairs this morning, got my water, got on the bike, started going. So it takes out your transit time. Let's say if it's colder months, that's in the winter, and you didn't want to be outside, or it's raining, or there's a storm, I would just move this inside and can still do the race, do the ride. Today it's only 69 degrees in Austin, so that made it really nice, so I thought I'd come outside. I also always connect a heart strap monitor around my chest. This is a much more accurate way of gauging my heart rate in comparison to one on your watch. That's also connected. It's also connected to the fan here. The fan is great because when you're outside, you've got the resistance of the wind, and that's going to cool you down. But since it's on a stationary, it's great to be able to have the fan to keep your heart rate down so you're not overheating. Just like running, if you're familiar with the 80-20% of 80% of your workouts are cardiovascular endurance, and you want to be in a zone 2. And then 20% would be in a tempo or a threshold, hard workouts for the week. Today was a zone 2, so able to monitor my heart rate the entire time is just making me managing fatigue throughout the week. Because this week I've got 12 hours on the bike, I've got 7 hours of physical therapy, some strength training, and a few elliptical workouts to mimic running until I get back with my neck being healthy. I've also got a stand right here. The company is Tons. I really like it because you can just have your laptop right in front of the bike for the workout. And then you just have to make sure that you have clip-ins for your shoes because they clip into the pedals here on the bike. The benefit of that is so that you can keep resistance not only when you're pushing down but when you're pulling up. So it's not all of a workout on your quads but also on your hamstrings and your calves. Hey guys, we're back here at Collective in Austin. Today we're going to be using mostly bands to do mobility, stretching, functionality, bit of strengthening. Trust me, every fiber of my body wants to be loading up with the weights or running down the trail. At 9 weeks into recovery, that's just not quite where we are. A lot of athletes come back way too quick, and that's the last thing I want to do is give myself a setback. I've got a race in 7 months, so I'm really learning to listen to my body. We've been making progress here. I'm getting stronger, but the areas of concern are still my tight neck, my weak right side pec. This is a neural thing on the right side because of the spinal cord injury. We had the bulging discs that were removed, but they were compressing. It's almost like standing on a hose of nerves, and we're slowly trying to reactivate them by overloading. It's a supply and demand thing. That includes my right shoulder and my right back. So we're gonna see a lot of things like thoracic extension, where I'm really trying to work on opening up that middle back. Even though that wasn't in the direct impact in the accident, it's connected, and I'm noticing everything's connected all the way through the spinal cord. You're also gonna see spinal rotation and thoracic extension. Both of these are allowing me to really work on that mobility around my back, which is gonna be important for swimming, important for running, important for cycling. So let's get right into an exercise here. This is called threading the needle. Just add a bit of tension here. Get my shoulder down to the ground. Rotate all the way around. Follow it with my eyes. Next 3 positions are all gonna be in quadruped, which is hands and knees or all 4. This first one is called cervical extension. Quadruped with cervical extension. I'm basically just chin tuck right here with resistance, and that's strengthening the back of my neck. This next one is a quadruped hover again, but we're gonna add in a chest fly for my right side. The good portion of this is my left hand and arm can really support with my chest. I get up on all fours with my knees off the ground, and then I bring my right hand to my left hand. I do 3 sets of 10, and the other good side on the right side, my right shoulder and chest is not strong enough to do that, to hold up with just 3. So what I do is I just lift my hand here, and that's still overloading my right side. This is the supply and demand thing I was talking about, where right now I might be able to do a shoulder tap. That's about the only strength I have, but that's allowing my chest fibers and neural fibers to get the notification that my brain needs to send more information and more strength. And gradually over time, we can get the right side back up to date with the left side. Okay, the last one from the ground is gonna be an explosive push-up. Last week I did just 3 sets of 4, and it was a really big struggle. I'm really happy to say just adding 1 in each day, and now we're a week later, I'm up to 3 sets of 12. Okay, this last one, using a band again, it's similar to a lat pull down, but this allows us to do unilateral or isolateral, just using one side, because my right side really needs to catch up to my left. Try to keep my traps down. So there's the band work for you guys. That was spinal rotation, thoracic extension, and strengthening my weakened right side. When I was younger and come into the gym, I would see only older people doing these type of things. And I used to laugh and say like, oh, I'm just lifting heavy weight and I'll do that when I get older. If you're neglecting it and you're younger, I can tell you, especially as an athlete who's getting older now, it's one of the most important things is mobility and functionality. Guys, this is called a pendulum squat. If your gym happens to have it, I highly recommend it. Even if you're healthy, really allows you to get a range of motion. If I do a squat outside of this, there's no way I can go past 90 degrees. That's either because of knee immobility, now thoracic immobility. One of the nice things here is you can see that I'm leaning up against a pad. So my entire spinal cord is completely protected and stable. I also can't put a bar on top of my neck right now because that's going to put strain on my broken neck. So it's still, as you can see, it's really loading my quads, my hamstrings, my calves, and I can load up some weight and get a really nice exercise. Leg extension and leg curl is something that I'm doing as a triathlete several times a week. With managing fatigue and with my number of hours getting pretty high with all of the endurance training and the physical therapy, some things have to drop out or lower down to like more of a maintenance level because I don't need that much muscle mass in order to, it actually holds me back a little bit from racing. So I'd still like to be a hybrid athlete, but the most important thing is like strength, especially because I'm a cyclist and I'm a runner. You see that I do it just on one side at a time because you saw last episode that I broke my right leg. Even if the leg strength has gotten back to 50-50, there'll be something protective about my mind where I'm never actually, if I do both of them at the same time, I'm never distributing the weight equally. Activating my quads and my hamstrings here in the gym is super important to me as a triathlete because on the bicycle I can generate more power if I have a lot of leg strength. It's also great that it's isolated from, in a lot of exercises, from my spinal cord, and I can really keep my spine stable in things like the pendulum squat. It's not working in things like the leg extension and the hamstring curl. So I really try to incorporate these as much as possible. It's less important, other than getting my strength back in my right side, it's less important to keep muscle mass on my upper body. If anything, it's actually going to make me a faster triathlete if I lean out a little bit there. Elliptical is something I've gotten on in the last few weeks. It's really great as a cross trainer for me, for someone who in the next few weeks is going to be getting back into running. It allows me to use the similar muscle group, but not high impact on my spinal cord. That's the reason I'm not running. After I got out of the neck brace, 5 weeks post-op, my surgeon said I could do whatever I wanted, basically. I took that too literally and went for a run. That night was the worst night of my life with pain. So silly move, but didn't damage anything. Just made me realize really need to ease back into running. I can't do something like a row machine because it's a little too jerky as another form of cardio. I can't do the ski erg. Again, don't want to do any jerking movement on my spinal cord. So this works really well. Right now my schedule looks like I've got 12 hours of cycling. I've got 2 to 3 hours on the elliptical. I've got 3 hours of strength training, so that's 3 days a week. I've got 2 hours of swimming and I'm going to do this week. And then every day I've got physical therapy, twice a week in front of a supervisor and 5 times a week by myself. That adds up to 27 hours a week. So it's almost a full-time job. The nice thing is, right now while I'm not swimming as much and running as much, I can do 7 hours of physical therapy as I get healthier and reincorporate running. Those are going to go up to 5, 6, 7 hours a week. Swimming's going to go up to 3 to 4 hours a week. The timing should work well that it's going to drop out my physical therapy because in 6 to 8 weeks total, my arms, my back, my neck, my shoulder, and all the areas affected from the accident should be healed and stronger. So yeah, that's about 27 hours, which is close to a full-time job and tough to manage sometimes, but that's a wrap for the day for fitness. We got in the biking, we got in the elliptical, we got in the strength training, we got in the physical therapy. Now we're gonna go home, have some steaks, and do some contrast therapy with some buddies. Today I'd like to open up about my relationship with ketamine. If you're unfamiliar, it's a drug used either as anesthetic or a painkiller. It can have hallucinogenic effects. More recently, it's been recognized as something that can help deal with things like anxiety and depression. So if you're unfamiliar with my background, I spent most of my adult life in war zones, either as a Marine Corps infantryman or working for the government in protective services. Many of us come home from, some of the traumatic experiences, and we experience PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. For me personally, I was 22, 21 when I left the Marines. I felt like I had handled the situation pretty well. Went straight to a top academic college at the University of North Carolina, started partying a little bit. I did have nightmares for a year or two, but I felt like I moved on from them. Versus some of my platoon members, I felt like they were having a bit more destructive behavior, or some of them getting suicidal. I thought I had handled it pretty well. Fast forward a decade, and I had my first panic attack. For those of you who haven't had one, and it affects everyone differently, for me, I had a chest getting really tight, my windpipe closing, my heart rate going through the roof, my fingers and toes get really tingly, and there's just sort of this impending doom that comes over me, almost as if I'm convinced that there's medically something wrong with me and I'm gonna die. I ended up spending the next 6 months checking myself into an emergency room half a dozen times. Each time they would do some tests, my vitals, and the ER doctors would come to me and say, "You're absolutely fine. You should go see a psychiatrist." So eventually I did end up going and seeing a psychiatrist, and they told me, "Yeah, you have a panic disorder." All of them that I saw recommended I get on something called an SSRI, which is a serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor, basically pumping you with a bunch of a feel-good hormone that you have in your brain, or chemical called serotonin. When I started researching that, it said that it was modifying people's behavior, their personality. I found out that once you get on it, you're not supposed to be off of it for life. So that really intimidated me. And I decided to go more of a holistic approach. So I got into breath work, I got into meditation, and I was able to reduce my panic attacks from 6 to 7 times a day at one point, all the way down to maybe one every month or every couple months. I was also able to start identifying triggers. For me, caffeine, because it also raises your heart rate and tightened my chest a little. It induces the same symptoms of a panic attack, so it would send me into a panic attack. And the way that it was described to me is almost like it's that fight or flight parasympathetic going on inside your body. Whereas, let's say it would be useful if you saw a tiger in the jungle. Your mind takes a picture of that's a scary thing, and you should go into fight or flight mode. So all of your blood goes towards your organs to protect you, and that's when those symptoms come on. Obviously, when I drink a cup of coffee, I don't want those symptoms coming on, but for me personally, that was a trigger for me. Fast forward to 2 years ago, and I moved to Austin, Texas. This is after living a nomadic lifestyle for 12 years in many different countries, fast-paced life in high-stress environments. I was really looking forward to feeling settled and having things that I'd never had before, a community. I wanted to get a puppy, a house, and also just start taking care of appointments like dentist and getting checkups medically. And I still was having from time to time some anxiety. So when I first got to Austin, I met somebody who was talking to me about how prevalent ketamine was as a nasal spray, and it was being used. New medicine was bringing it on as a solution for anxiety and depression. So in Austin here, I ended up getting a prescription for ketamine nasal spray. I decided to start trying a couple sprays, and I was pretty surprised in a positive way of how it was affecting my brain. It almost immediately took away anxiety. It was used medicinally for me for any time that I felt something was coming on. It nipped it in the butt within seconds or minutes. It also seemed to interact with my brain in a very positive way that allowed me to have different perspectives that were very positive. It almost felt like I was able to tap into versions of myself that I hadn't before. So I started using it a little bit more regularly. At this time, I'd also decided to stop using alcohol, stop smoking weed, anything like that, partly because I was now training for an Ironman, and that's where you need to be 100% recovered every single time you're waking up in the morning just to be able to manage the training load. I also wanted to redefine my relationship with alcohol because since 20, I was using it before I went to any social event, before I went on a date. And I just wanted to ask myself, is this because I have an insecurity? Is this because I'm not confident in myself? Why am I using another substance in order to alter myself? So I started showing up to those dates and events sober, or at least without alcohol. And I noticed that I actually liked the version of myself even better. In hindsight, I realized that I was using ketamine as a replacement for alcohol, although at the time, since the ketamine I didn't see having any negative effects, and because I was prescribed by a doctor, I just made the excuse that that was okay to use. It was something that I didn't see any issues with because, unlike alcohol that has hangovers where you feel worse, ketamine wasn't having that effect on me. And I started creating it as it was my friend. It was something I used to enhance an experience, to make it better for me. And that's when I started adding it into certain training, like running. I first went down to the trail after having a few sprays, and I was enjoying the run a lot more. In Ironman training, you are doing 10 to 15 hours of running and cycling and swimming every single week. And sometimes it can be mundane. So in order to break up the monotony, I just decided, what the heck, why not just have a few sprays? I'm not proud of this behavior looking back, but I just want to be transparent with you guys so you can understand how I got to where I was, to how we're going to get to where I got to at the culmination of it all, and the reason that I want to talk to you about my ketamine use. So I ended up using ketamine pretty regularly. Also, while I was running, I felt like I'd cracked a code. It felt like a performance-enhancing drug to me because it was taking away the DOMS, or the soreness in my legs from all of the training. Looking back, I'm disappointed in myself that I was using a drug in order to get to a state, and it ended up actually really getting in the way of my success, because that's my body's way of signaling or warning that I either need to slow down or I might have something hurting me. But I kept going. At this point, I was starting to get a little bit more dependent on the drug. I didn't realize it at the time. I think some of my friends did and started to warn me, but I didn't want to listen. I just wanted to do something that I felt like was making everything a lot more fun to me. I didn't think it was having any negative effects. So when I would be on these runs, it seemed like the music was better that I was listening to. The lake looked better. I could push further. So I started adding it even to my stationary bike, and the YouTube I was watching, or the avatar in my Zwift app when I'm bicycling. It all seemed as if I was almost in a video game and I was just having fun with it. All super immature decisions and behavior. But I'd gotten to this point where I just felt like I could add it to anything. Where it got super dangerous for me was the point that I started doing it on outdoor rides and around other people. Obviously, this is horrible behavior because I was potentially endangering people who were husbands or fathers. And so I was on my first ride on July 8th and had joined a peloton, which is a group of guys. They were really fast. I'd been invited to join some professional cyclists up north. And I had this massive amount of guilt and shame that came over me in that moment. It started raining pretty heavily. And I decided to slow down and get away from them. And 10 minutes later, in the heavy rain, I was coming up over a lip. I was traveling way too fast because I felt like I was invincible and that nothing was going to happen to me because I was on a drug. And saw an intersection I wasn't going to be able to avoid. I veered off the road into a ditch that was 8 feet deep and ended up going over the handlebars and fracturing my neck, giving myself a head injury and nearly dying. In my opinion, and what I've come to find out, is this was definitely both a physical and mental awakening, but also a really spiritual awakening. 10 days before that, I'd found God on a run. I had a very spiritual experience with him, and I find it both beautiful and very important to recognize that God decided to show himself to me right before he knew that I was going to get into a situation like this, where I ended up spending time in hospital with 3 broken vertebrae, a broken sternum. And if I hadn't had that wake-up call and I hadn't had God on my side to go through this recovery, I don't know how I would have handled that situation. I ended up not just stopping ketamine, but anything and everything. I have completely turned my life around since then. I hate that it gotten to the point where I got in a group of riders and was potentially endangering people, but that's what happened. So fortunate that I didn't die, that I'm not paralyzed. We had a few scares about that. And I'm so proud of myself that I'm never gonna go back to doing anything like that ever again. Another thing I wanted to comment on was my videographer, Pablo, had asked a few weeks ago for a different episode when we were documenting the crash if I had a picture of the Strava route. I realized I hadn't logged into Strava from that day. So I went and I downloaded the route. And if you're not familiar with Strava, they have something called King of the Mountain, which is anyone who's ever done that segment of a road or a route, the speed that you're traveling the fastest, you end up getting a course. Whoever is the fastest rider gets a course record and their name goes to the top. And you'll see the pictures here that on that day, I was going 34.7 miles per hour in heavy rain, which was 4 miles per hour faster than anyone who's ever done that route. I'm definitely not saying that from any point of ego or pride, just to show you how incoherent I must have been by using something else to convince myself that I could move that fast on a road like that. Obviously, nearly cost my life. I say that just to help you understand. I'm not sure if there's anybody out there that also has something that maybe they feel dependent on, but doesn't necessarily understand the repercussions that it could have. I just really wanted to be vulnerable with you guys and authentic, so that you understand what I've been through to arrive at this point. I can tell you now in my training that I've restarted, the feeling that I have completely sober surpass and supersede any of the feelings that I've had on the drug while I was using it. And that's pretty amazing for me. My relationship with God has gotten so much better, which I thought for some time that I was only achieving that perspective when I was on ketamine. I'm actually finding that my interactions with him and relationships and how he's guiding me, I'm even more in tune with now that I'm sober. And I'm just so proud of each of my physical accomplishments because I know that I'm doing them completely on my own. And also, if I think about back to if I were still using something like ketamine and a painkiller while I was going through this recovery, I would have done so many setbacks because I wasn't listening to the pain in my neck when I needed to stop a ride or a run. So that's it, guys. I just really wanted to be transparent with you about things that are going on or have gone on in my life and what's allowed me to arrive at this state today. Obviously, there are some things that I'm not proud of, but I would imagine we all have some things that we're not that proud of. I'd like to be fully authentic with you guys and we can grow together through this. This has been, when people come to me and they say, oh, I'm so sorry about your broken neck. Yeah, I'm going through a lot of pain physically for sure. And this has been quite the experience. But I actually and truthfully tell people now this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've found an amazing relationship with God through this. I'm going to do this next Ironman to the best of my ability, 100% sober and relying on my God-given strengths and weaknesses and work through all of it together. Thank you guys for watching. It's an incredible opportunity for me to get to grow and strengthen through this process, and that includes talking about things from my lifestyle, things I'm struggling with. All of it is related, and I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.